The message arrived at exactly the wrong moment, when Emma Chamberlain's apartment was quiet enough for her thoughts to start flirting with the past, when the microphone was already warm, when her matcha tasted like comfort and denial. The file name was simple, almost innocent, but the first second of audio wasn't. A slow exhale, the faint clink of a glass, and then a voice that sounded like it had learned how to smile while hiding a blade. "Emma," the girl whispered, close to the mic, like she wanted to be overheard. "I don't know if this is a confession or a warning. I just know it started like a crush, and it ended with me becoming someone I don't recognize." Emma's fingers paused above the trackpad. Something about the tone tugged at that private place in her chest where fascination and fear share a thin wall. The girl continued, and her words carried a heat that didn't feel like romance as much as it felt like gravity. "He wasn't my boyfriend, not even close. He was just a man who looked at me once like he saw everything, and after that, I spent months trying to feel that look again." Emma swallowed, leaning forward without realizing it. She had heard heartbreak, she had heard betrayal, she had heard the hollow aftermath of love. But this sounded like desire turning into devotion, turning into hunger, the kind of hunger that doesn't ask permission. The girl laughed softly, the sound delicate and unsettling. "I told myself it was harmless," she said. "A little curiosity, a little fantasy. But you know what happens when your brain decides a person is the answer to a question you never learned how to ask?" Emma felt the room shift, as if the air thickened. She glanced at the red recording light, then back at the audio wave that kept moving, alive and steady, carrying the stranger's story into her headphones like a secret being poured into her ear. "I met him at a cafe," the caller said, voice low, almost intimate, and Emma could picture it. The kind of cafe with soft lighting and too much cinnamon in the air, where everyone pretends they're busy so they can secretly watch each other. "He was older than me, not in a creepy way, in a composed way," she added quickly, as if defending the memory from judgment. "He had this calm confidence, like he didn't need anything, but if he wanted something, the world would quietly move aside." The girl admitted she noticed the details first: the watch he adjusted without thinking, the sleeve he rolled up with a practiced ease, the way he looked up when she walked in like he'd sensed her before he saw her. "He held eye contact," she whispered, and there was a tremor in her breath, like she still felt it. Not the polite kind, the kind that makes you forget you were ever safe. I remember thinking, if he asked for my name, I'd give him everything else too. Emma's cheeks warmed despite herself, not because the story was explicit, because it wasn't, but because it carried that dangerous electricity of longing. The girl described how he smiled, not wide, not eager, just enough to imply he knew what he was doing. "He said one sentence," she continued. "He asked if the seat across from me was taken. That's it. But the way he said it made it feel like an invitation and a dare." Emma's throat tightened with recognition of the pattern, the mind grabbing onto a moment and refusing to let go. "After that day," the girl said, "I went back every week, same time, same outfit energy, same perfume. I didn't even like the coffee there. I liked the possibility." She confessed she started choosing her clothes like armor and bait at the same time, started practicing conversations in the mirror, started laughing in ways she thought he'd find effortless. "I told myself it was playful," she said, "but I was building a ritual, and rituals turn into religion faster than you think." Emma sat perfectly still because she knew rituals. She knew the way you can turn a person into a symbol, and then blame yourself when the symbol doesn't love you back. The girl's story sharpened as it went on, the warmth giving way to a colder kind of intensity. "He didn't always show up," she admitted, and that made it worse. Emma felt a chill, because absence is gasoline for obsession. "Sometimes he'd disappear for weeks, and I'd feel like I was starving," the caller said, and there was a raw honesty in it that sounded almost ashamed. "I'd tell myself I was over it. Then I'd see a man with the same haircut from behind, and my whole body would light up like a match." Emma's stomach turned in that empathetic way it did when someone described losing control over their own mind. "I found his name," the girl continued. "Not from him, from the barista. I pretended I needed it for a joke." She confessed she searched him online that night, just once, just to satisfy curiosity, just to make the fantasy feel less foggy. But once she found him, she didn't stop. She found his work page, his photos, the events he attended, the places he tagged. She learned the restaurants he loved, the cities he visited, the songs he reposted. "I started running into him," she said, voice tightening. "But I don't mean by accident." Emma's pulse quickened. The caller swallowed audibly, as if she could taste the moment she crossed the line. "I told myself it was romantic," the girl said. "Like fate. Like I was being bold. But it wasn't fate. It was planning." Emma's hand hovered near the spacebar like she could pause the story to protect herself from where it was going, but she didn't. She couldn't. "I changed my route home," the girl admitted. "I joined a gym near his office. I went to a bookstore he posted once, even though I hate bookstores because they make me feel lonely." The girl's laugh returned, but now it sounded brittle. "I started living around him," she whispered, like a moon pretending it wasn't orbiting. Emma felt a quiet ache behind her ribs, that philosophical sting of realizing how easily the mind can turn desire into a cage and call it devotion. And then, the girl said softly, he noticed. Emma's breath caught. Not in the way I fantasized, the caller added quickly, voice shaking. Not like some cinematic moment where he pulls me close and admits he's been thinking about me too. It was smaller, more real, more dangerous. The girl described how one afternoon he looked up and frowned slightly, like a man recognizing a melody he didn't remember learning. He said, "You again," she whispered, and the phrase sounded innocent but carried a slow burn underneath it. Emma could feel the dopamine spike in the girl's voice, the intoxication of being seen. I smiled like it was a coincidence, the caller admitted. I joked, I played it cool, I made myself charming, I made myself safe. She paused, and her next words landed heavy. I didn't tell him the truth, that I'd built my weeks around the possibility of bumping into him, that I knew his favorite drink before he ordered it, that I could name the city he was flying to next because he posted a boarding pass reflection in his sunglasses. Emma's skin prickled. The girl continued, quieter now. He asked if I was following him, not accusing, just testing, and I laughed it off so well he almost believed me. A long silence crackled in the audio. Then the girl said, barely audible, "But Emma, I think part of him liked it." Emma's heart beat harder because that implication, someone enjoying the power they have over another, was the kind of fuel that turns obsession into wildfire. He didn't tell me to stop, the caller said. He didn't set a boundary. He just smiled that same slow smile and said, "Maybe I'll see you around." The girl's breath trembled, and the heat in her voice returned, darker now, wrapped in dread. And I went home that night feeling chosen, she whispered. But I wasn't chosen. I was encouraged. Emma stared at the moving waveform, the room suddenly too warm, her own reflection faint in the laptop screen. She realized she'd been holding her breath. She exhaled slowly, and her voice, when she finally spoke to her audience again, came out as a whisper. If you're listening right now, Emma murmured into the mic, don't click away, because this is the part where it stops being a story about a crush and starts being a story about control. Emma kept recording, but her voice was quieter now, the way it gets when you realize you're holding something that can cut you if you grip it too tightly, and the caller's next breath sounded like a door closing somewhere deep inside her. After he said that, the girl continued, I started living for those almost moments. The little eye contact, the half smile, the way my name sounded in his mouth when he finally learned it. I'd replay it like a song I couldn't stop looping. She admitted she stopped eating properly on days she thought she might see him, because hunger felt cleaner than uncertainty, because an empty stomach gave her the illusion of control. I started dressing like a message, she whispered, not like a person. She described the way she'd catch herself checking reflective surfaces, not to see if she looked pretty, but to see if she looked like someone he'd want to keep looking at. And when I didn't run into him, she said, I didn't feel disappointed. I felt punished. Emma's stomach tightened at that word, punished. The caller confessed she began sending herself into his orbit on purpose, not because she believed in destiny, but because she couldn't tolerate the silence of not knowing. I found out where he went on Fridays, she said, voice low and careful, as if she were tiptoeing around her own shame. And I started going too. I learned the bartender's name. I learned the lighting in that place, the kind that makes everybody look like a version of themselves they'd never admit they crave. She paused, and when she spoke again, there was a kind of heat in it that felt like a candle too close to skin. He'd come up behind me sometimes, she said, close enough that I could feel the air shift, like the room made space for him. He'd say something casual, something meaningless, and it would still make my whole body react like I'd been chosen. Emma swallowed, thinking about how desire can be beautiful until it becomes a leash. I kept telling myself, the girl whispered, this is just attraction. Everybody gets obsessed sometimes, but then I realized I wasn't attracted to him as a person. I was addicted to the version of myself I became when he looked at me. That sentence landed like a stone in Emma's chest. The caller went on. I started pulling away from my friends. I'd leave plans early, not because I wanted to be alone, but because I wanted to be available. Like my entire existence was an open tab waiting for him to decide to pay attention. Emma felt her own throat tighten, a flash of recognition passing through her, because she knew what it was like to rearrange your life for someone's crumbs and call it romance. And then he started doing something that, I don't know, Emma, the caller said, her voice shaking now. It felt like he was feeding it on purpose. He'd disappear for a while, then reappear with one compliment, one line that made me feel electric, and then he'd vanish again. It wasn't even cruel in a loud way. It was surgical. That's when it went too far, the girl whispered, and her voice sounded smaller, like she was shrinking under the weight of her own confession. One night he texted me just a simple message. Are you out? She inhaled, and Emma could hear her heart in the silence between the words. I said yes. He told me where he was. I went. The caller described arriving and seeing him across the room, the way the light caught the edge of his jaw, The way he looked like he belonged there more than anyone else. He smiled when he saw me, she said, and I swear it felt like winning. Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, not in judgment, but in dread. The caller's next words were slow, careful, loaded. He leaned in close, she said, and he said, "You're persistent. I like that." Emma felt her stomach drop because that wasn't affection. It was appraisal. "He gave me just enough," the caller continued, "just enough attention to make me feel special. And then he pulled back, like he wanted to see if I'd chase. And I did. I chased." She admitted she laughed too loudly at his jokes, agreed with opinions she didn't share, became softer where she wanted to be sharp, became cooler where she wanted to be warm. "I was editing myself in real time," she whispered, "and it was working." Emma felt a quiet rage flicker behind her ribs, not at the girl, but at the way some people learn to play with longing like it's a toy. "Later that night," the caller said, voice trembling, "I went to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself, not because I looked different, because my eyes looked hungry, like a stranger was borrowing my face." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked. "I left with him," she admitted. Not in a dramatic way, not in a scandal way, just walking behind him like I'd been waiting for permission to exist. Emma's heart pounded, but she kept her voice gentle, because the caller wasn't bragging. She was unraveling. "We didn't do anything extreme," the girl added quickly, almost defensively, but the intimacy was there in the way he held the moment, in the way he let me get close and then kept reminding me I was lucky to be there. The caller's breath shook. "And the next day he acted like nothing happened," she whispered. "He didn't text. He didn't call. He didn't even look at my story. And I felt like I'd been dropped off a cliff." Emma closed her eyes, because she knew that fall. The moment you realize the person you worship sees you as a scene, not a soul. "I went back to that cafe," the caller said, "and I sat there for hours like a ghost. I kept thinking, if I just appear, he'll come back. But I wasn't a person to him, Emma. I was proof that he could." The caller's voice turned raw now, stripped of heat, stripped of fantasy. "I did something I'm ashamed of," she whispered. "I checked his phone number in every app. I searched his name again. I found a woman's profile he followed recently. She posted a photo with him, her hand on his chest, his smile, the same smile." Emma's stomach twisted. "And I realized," the girl said, "I wasn't special. I was a chapter he didn't even bookmark." She sounded like she was crying quietly, trying not to be loud enough for her own guilt to hear her. "I went into my closet and I saw all the clothes I bought because of him. I smelled that perfume. I opened my notes app and saw the list of places he liked, like I was studying for a test no one asked me to take. And I suddenly understood. I didn't fall in love. I got consumed." Emma leaned closer to the mic, voice soft but intense. "Listen to me," she said. "If you're hearing this and you feel your stomach twist, it's because you recognize something. Not her exact story, but the way obsession disguises itself as destiny." The caller continued, voice barely a whisper. "I blocked him," she said. "I didn't want to. It felt like cutting off my own oxygen, but I did it because I saw myself disappearing." Emma's eyes stung, and then the girl confessed, "I panicked. I unblocked him. I reblocked him. I kept circling the same wound like I was trying to lick it closed." She inhaled shakily. "Emma, I don't know how to stop wanting the thing that harmed me. I don't know how to stop craving the person who made me feel seen for 1 second and invisible for the rest." Emma let the silence breathe for a moment, then spoke with a kind of honesty that doesn't flatter you. It frees you. "Obsession isn't love," Emma said quietly. "It's an attempt to control uncertainty. It's your brain trying to turn a human being into a solution for an emptiness it doesn't know how to fill. And it's seductive because it gives you a mission, a purpose, a reason to wake up, but it steals your life while it pretends to give it meaning." She paused, swallowing hard. "If you take one thing from this," Emma continued, "let it be this. The most dangerous people aren't always loud villains. Sometimes they're calm, sometimes they're charming, sometimes they simply enjoy being wanted. And if you're already starving for validation, they can feel like a feast." Emma's voice softened again, almost tender. "But you are not here to orbit anyone," she said. "You are not a moon. You are your own sky." The caller sniffed, then whispered, "I want to be me again." Emma nodded even though no one could see it. "You can," Emma said, "and it starts with small, brutal acts of choosing yourself. Delete the rituals, break the pattern, stop feeding the fantasy." She exhaled slowly. "And if you're listening right now, and you've ever felt yourself slipping into obsession, if you've ever confused intensity with love, please don't keep this to yourself. Like the video, subscribe, share it with someone who needs the reminder that desire is not a life plan. Because the faster we name these patterns, the less power they have over us." Emma's voice cracked slightly. "Your worth isn't measured by who you can get," she said. "It's measured by who you refuse to become to be wanted." She clicked stop, but the room didn't feel silent anymore. It felt like something had finally been spoken out loud that should have been said a long time ago. And somewhere on the other end of the internet, a girl who had almost disappeared inside someone else's shadow finally took her first breath as herself again.